Hi there, folks. So, I have been reading this book, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. And normally when I'm reading something, I do a book review on whenever I finish it. But it occurred to me as I was reading this book that because it's probably going to be mostly appreciated by people in the UK and it's not a novel, I decided to do something a bit different with it. I haven't finished reading it yet, but what I've decided to do is to include it in a list of books that have made me laugh out loud. I also thought, because I wanted to make a list of laugh out loud books, just because with the world the way it is at the moment, we could all do with a laugh now and then, and there is nothing quite as healing sometimes as a good laugh. So I won't be doing a full book review of this book, but I will be talking about it throughout the course of this video. So here it is, a list of books. Excuse me. Somebody is demanding attention. Come on then. Get back. Now look what you've made me do. Yes, hey. She is a little madam sometimes. Yes, you are. She is a diva. As I was saying, here it is, my list. And it's quite a big one of books that have made me laugh out loud. But you make me laugh out loud sometimes too. So, as usual, I'm starting with the earliest published, and I'm going to start with a Jane Austen novel. And for this one, I'm going to look at Northanger Abbey. Yeah, sorry, Till. Northanger Abbey is the story of Catherine Morland. And in this book, Jane Austen really makes fun of what was a very, very popular genre of book at that time. They were called Gothic novels, not the kind of Gothic novel we think of today, but they were the kind of sensational novel of the time with absolutely completely perfect heroines and completely unrealistic events. And by the way, apologies for any background noises, machinery noises. One of my neighbours is having their garden completely redone, so you might hear the sound of drilling or other machinery. That's what that is. So back to Jane Austen. So Catherine Morland is completely obsessed by these Gothic novels, and in particular one called The Mysteries of Udolpho. And I just want to read you this bit from the introduction, which explains what Jane Austen is doing in this book. Northanger Abbey has for its doctrine one of Jane Austen's enduring themes, the danger of imagination uncontrolled by reason. Behind the criticism of Gothic novels lies a keener criticism of silly novel readers. What is significant in her characters is not so much their choice of books as the way they read them. Catherine's folly lies not in indulging a taste for melodramatic fiction, but in imposing its values on the life around her. I think that's a great way of looking at it. It's not so much the novels themselves that Jane Austen makes fun of. It's the readers of those novels and those who expect life to be like the novels. And this is where the comedy arises with Catherine Morland and her perceptions of what is going on around her, and that is what makes this particularly funny. And also, as with all great comedy, there is seriousness behind that too. So that is why I've chosen Northanger Abbey above all the other Jane Austen books, because they all have laugh out loud moments. But I think that is possibly one of the most amusing themes of all of Jane Austen's works. Now, one book I have to mention, even though I've mentioned it a couple of times recently, published in 1889, It's Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome, or to give it its full title, Three Men in a Boat, to say nothing of the dog. And Three Men in the Boat, I have not got a copy, but I read it a long time ago in my 20s, and I really did laugh out loud. So, of course, the Three Men in a Boat is about three men who decide to go on a boating holiday along the River Thames. And they are also going to camp in tents along the way, which, of course, camping always has its own opportunities for amusement, shall we say. And the hilarity really ensues right from the beginning when they can't find the proper platform at Waterloo Station to get their train. One of the things that I think I'm going to be sort of talking about quite a lot on this video is the way that comedy is very often to do with shared experiences. And this thing about Waterloo Station is very interesting because in Victorian times, a lot of people knew, or there was a sort of big thing about Waterloo Station being extremely confusing. So that is one of those little episodes that would have been hilariously funny in Victorian times. But we don't need to be Victorian to still find events like that funny because, train stations can still be really, really confusing places. But there are all kinds of really hilarious incidents involving putting up tents, camping stoves, and of course there are various adventures with their dog Montmorency, including, just to give you an example, if you haven't read Three Men in a Boat, this was while they're trying to make an Irish stew. I'm just going to quote this. I forget the other ingredients, but I know nothing was wasted. And I remember that towards the end, Montmorency, who had evinced great interest in the proceedings throughout, strolled away with an earnest and thoughtful air, reappearing a few minutes afterwards with a dead water rat in his mouth, which he evidently wished to present as his contribution to the dinner, whether in a sarcastic spirit or with a genuine desire to assist, I cannot say. So that's a kind of dry, slightly sarcastic humour that you get quite a lot of the time in Three Men in a Boat, and it's like that all the way through. So if you really love that kind of English humour, so very much the English poking fun at themselves too, which we do very, very well, that is a great book if you need a laugh. Now, for a little bit of childhood nostalgia, what could be better than a reread of Winnie the Pooh? First published in 1926, the Winnie the Pooh books are loved by so many children from that date onwards and still today. And I myself, I first had Winnie the Pooh read to me by my brother when I think I must have been lying in bed not feeling very well, and my brother came and read Winnie the Pooh to me. But I then started reading it over and over again for myself, and they certainly did make me laugh out loud. They did then, and they still do now. One of my favourite episodes is the one where it's Eeyore's birthday, and Pooh and Piglet are trying to find birthday presents for him. And I don't know why this makes me laugh so much, I don't know, but because it's quite sad in a way. But poor old Piglet decides to give Eeyore a red balloon, and as he's running with this balloon to give to Eeyore, he trips over and falls on the balloon, which of course explodes, and poor old Piglet doesn't know what's happened, and at first he thinks the world has exploded and that he's now sitting on the moon. And then he thinks, oh, maybe it's just the wood that exploded. And then he thinks, oh, perhaps it's just me that has exploded. And I don't know why. That makes me laugh just thinking about it. And then, of course, he stands up and then so trying to work out what's happened, and then says, "And what's that piece of rag?" And of course, it's the broken balloon. There is something about that just immediately makes me want to start chuckling. I think it's Piglet's innocence that makes me laugh somehow, and his confusion and bewilderment. That scene tickles me anyway. So what are your favourite scenes from Winnie the Pooh? Such a good one. If you're having a bad day, go and read Winnie the Pooh. Now, next on my list is another book I don't have a copy of, but I read, again, back in my 20s. This was published in 1932, and it's Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons. Cold Comfort Farm is about a woman who decides to go and visit some distant relatives on their farm in the fictional village called Howling. The names in this book are wonderful. Her aunt is called Aunt Ada Doom, and the other inhabitants of the farm are called the Starcadders. And it just goes through all this life on this really badly run farm. And all the characters, all of whom have some dark sort of festering emotional problem, and just a series of adventures and incidents. And one of the phrases that has stuck with me, but partly because my mother used to use it a lot because she loved this book too, was something nasty in the woodshed. My mother and I using that phrase quite a lot whenever we had to discuss something unpleasant. Just very, very funny. And I just remember enjoying it immensely and laughing out loud at every page, I think. So, as I said, I read it in my early 20s. How it would stand up now, I don't know. But if you have read it recently, do let me know what you thought of Cold Comfort Farm. My next book, once again, I don't have a copy because this was a book that I read. It was on our school curriculum, so I read it at school. It's My Family and Other Animals by Gerald Durrell, published in 1956. I think this is quite a well-known book, but certainly it is in Britain, I think. It's autobiographical, basically an account, obviously slightly exaggerated and fictionalized, but it's an account of Gerald Durrell's childhood with his family when they spent several years living in Corfu. And isn't it funny how a lot of comedy involves people's families? Because this is another one where we can have a good chuckle at the characters within somebody's family and various incidents to do with their particular idiosyncrasies, personalities, etc. And he tells a lot of wonderful stories about his siblings, including, of course, his brother Lawrence Durrell, who became a novelist later in life, of course, and his sister Margot, who was obsessed with diets and fashion, and his own experiences becoming interested in the animals of the island. It's because, of course, Gerald Durrell grew up to be quite a well-known naturalist and wrote lots of books about animals as well. But My Family and Other Animals is just a brilliantly amusing observation of that family and the people around, the people they meet. And of course, they're very inept. I think this was quite well detailed when they made a recent television series out of it. How they arrived on this island, knowing very little about what life on Corfu was going to be like, and various comic situations arising from that. And I remember really, really loving this book when we read it at school, and we had quite a few laughs from it. And I remember having to write a little story around one of the characters of My Family and Other Animals. I think I got quite high marks for. I can't remember much about it, but I do remember enjoying doing that. So yeah, My Family and Other Animals, if you haven't read that, then it's great fun. Now, my next book, I have to say, I don't hear much about this writer very often. I know he's no longer with us, but there was a time when he was really, really popular, and I went through several of his books. I could not get enough of them, and I absolutely loved his humour. This book I'm going to talk about is called Blot on the Landscape. It's by Tom Sharp. Now, this cover, it's very, very vulgar, and so is the book. So if you don't like vulgarity, you might not like this one, but it's not over-offensive. I just found them hilariously funny, and other books by him were Wilt, and Porterhouse Blue is also one of the best ones, set in an Oxford college. Blot on the Landscape is... It's basically about the controversy over the proposed building of a new motorway, and the comedy is around very much around the class system. It was published in 1975, where there is, still huge remnants of the class system, and it's some of the main characters are Sir Giles Lynchwood of Handyman Hall and his wife Maud, and of course Blot himself, who is their gardener. Of course, they have completely different opposing views on whether or not this motorway should happen. Lady Maud opposes this motorway because it would actually go through their property, but Sir Giles is actually in favour of it because he could make some shady money out of it. So Maud decides to recruit her gardener, Blot, to turn the garden into a wildlife park so that the road can't go through. And these books were hilariously funny. Really, really laugh out loud stuff. Very, very English, crude type humour, if you like that kind of thing. And possibly it may be a little bit dated by now. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm not quite sure whether I'd want to read them again, because I might not find them quite as funny as I did the first time round. But this is one of those instances where humour is really very much a vehicle to starkly criticise elements of society, such as the upper classes, etc. And Tom Sharp does that so well. So yes, laugh out loud funny, definitely. When I read them, who knows whether I would laugh out loud again today. But let me know if you've read any of these recently, because I really haven't heard very much about these books for some time. So let me know. Now, my next books, mentioned again fairly recently, but I have to include them in this list. Published in 1979, but originally a radio series. It's The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books by Douglas Adams. Now, I've got the original, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy cover up there, but I also have The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Life, the Universe and Everything, and So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. I do have the fifth lined up in my TBR bookshelf as well. But for some reason I don't have the original. I don't know why. These were books I could not get enough of when I started reading them. It's great comedy science fiction. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy starts out with a completely English character, Arthur Dent, being outraged because his home is about to be demolished to make way for a superhighway. interesting, similar theme to the book we've just been talking about. And he, of course, is demonstrating against this and won't leave his home. And then he discovers his best friend, Ford Prefect, is actually an alien from outer space. Comes to rescue Arthur because he says the planet is about to be demolished because an alien species, I think they're called the Vorgons, is that right? Are about to demolish the Earth to make way for a space highway. And he takes Arthur up to his spaceship, and various space adventures ensue, with Arthur being completely and utterly bewildered, bemused, and constantly amazed by everything that takes place. And they are just so laugh out loud. I just want to read just the opening of the restaurant at the end of the universe, which is the second in the series. And before chapter 1 starts, there's a page, he writes on a page, "There is a theory which states that if ever anyone discovers exactly what the universe is for and why it is here, it will instantly disappear and be replaced by something even more bizarre and inexplicable." And then on the next page, he says, "There is another theory which states that this has already happened." And chapter 1 starts, "The story so far. In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move." So that's the type of humour we have with Douglas Adams. Very wry, very witty, with various jabs at the way the world works, the way the universe works. They're just unputdownable, really. And seriously, if you want a good laugh, if you need a bit of escape from today's madness, then entering into the madness of Douglas Adams' universe. So yeah, the Hitchhiker's Guidebooks, definitely laugh out loud books. Now I've got 2 books by the next author. The first one's published in 1995 and it's High Fidelity by Nick Hornby. I love Nick Hornby. He's very good at making fun at his own sex. And this one in particular, this is about a guy who works in a record shop, and he and his colleagues spend a lot of time doing mixtapes and showing off about the music that they love and their knowledge of music. But he's just had a breakup, and he also now spends a lot of time looking back at all the different relationship breakups he's had over the past and trying to work out why. And it's just very funny, I think, for anyone who knows that obsession that some people get around sort of music knowledge, technical side of music, perhaps. I love what Harry Enfield says on the back. Harry Enfield, for those outside of the UK who may not know, is a comedian of the 80s and 90s, very funny man. And he says, brilliant, a very funny and concise explanation of why we men are as we are. If you are male, you should read it and then make your partner read it, so they will no longer hate you but pity you instead. So there we go. And it was made into quite a well-known film as well. And there's lots of funny stuff about different opinions, about different music, different bands, and all of that kind of stuff. So again, sort of shared experience, kind of comedy, but poking fun at their kind of different types kind of comedy as well. So that's great fun. My next book, also written and published in 1995, it similarly is a novel that kind of makes a little bit of fun of the male sex too. And this one is called Therapy, and it's by David Lodge. And this is about a man basically having a kind of midlife crisis. The main character, nicknamed Tubby, is a successful sitcom writer for television. He has a marriage, a good house. His life seems to be okay, but he's not happy. And he is trying to really basically find out why he is not happy. And it's written sort of partly in kind of diary form, and partly in kind of memoirs. And he is trying physiotherapy, aromatherapy, cognitive behaviour therapy, acupuncture, because he has this niggling knee pain and he doesn't know what that is. Just kind of, I suppose, very wry observations of sort of middle-aged life and trying to find out what his life is really all about. And it's very funny. I remember really enjoying this. I think it was my best friend that recommended this to me, and she's a therapist. So there you go, David Lodge. Have a go at that one if that sounds up your street. Now, another book that I have mentioned a lot in recent videos, but I just couldn't leave out of this list, is Bridget Jones' Diary, published in 1996 by Helen Fielding. And as I was compiling this list, this just really made me think it's very interesting how many funny books are in diary form. What is it about the diary or journal form that creates a real opportunity for humour? I suppose it's the kind of immediacy, perhaps, that the diary form gives us, the thoughts and observations of a particular day. I don't know. It's just one of the things I thought that it's quite an interesting thing that is the case. But of course, Bridget Jones' Diary and the subsequent books made into all those brilliant films is just incredibly funny. And of course, like so much comedy, it's about real life, real situations that people can totally relate to. And of course, the best comedy is true life, real experience. Things that we laugh at, things that we say, I know that. Yes, I really get that. And that is why we laugh. It's a shared experience. And this is why Bridget Jones' Diary, I think, was just so successful, because she just has a way of sort of bringing the reader in, especially if you are, as I was, just at around the time this came out. I was in my late 30s, early 40s, around that time. Bridget Jones is sort of 30-something, isn't she? And all those concerns that life in your 30s has. I just love the fact that at the beginning of each diary entry, she recounts how many alcohol units she's had, how many cigarettes, how many calories, and other things that concern her at the time. And of course, at the heart of it all, her experiences of trying to find a boyfriend and not really getting that right either. And of course, as we all know, Bridget Jones' Diary has a little bit of Pride and Prejudice story mixed into it, and she even calls one of the main characters Darcy. You know, that is the theme where when he and Bridget Jones first meet, they really hate each other, and she goes off and finds somebody else who is a complete rascal. So yeah, it's great fun. And I think this Salman Rushdie remarked on this book, and he says, a brilliant comic creation, even men will laugh. There you go. Salman Rushdie says that, then it has to be a winner. I like what Nicola Schulman says in the Times Literary Supplement. Bridget Jones' Diary rings with the unmistakable tone of something that is true to the marrow. It defines what it describes. And I think that's so, I mean, it is so true. As I keep saying, the best comedy comes out of something completely true that we all recognise. So there you go. That's why Bridget Jones' Diary is so popular. And my next one is another Nick Hornby novel, and this one, published in 1998, made into one of my favourite films with Hugh Grant, and is About a Boy. And this is, of course, again, as I said with Nick Hornby before, he's very, very good at making fun of the male sex. And the main character in this is the grown-up who is basically still a boy, very immature. Basically, his life is all about being cool and finding ways to get women into bed, really. And he kind of accidentally sort of forms this relationship with this young boy, 12-year-old boy, who kind of comes into his life, which he didn't really want to happen. They form this kind of strange friendship. And it is the young boy who, although he's very, very awkward, unpopular at school, a little bit weird, he is actually strangely more mature than the adult character. And it's very, very endearing and fun, very, very funny. It has some heartbreaking moments as well. But again, that a lot of observation of characters and events that we all recognise. That's what makes writers like Nick Hornby so funny, is because of that brilliant observation. I only read this fairly recently. I've seen the film several times, and the film kept very, very close to the book, except for the ending, which is completely different to the film. And apparently it was Hugh Grant that suggested the ending in the film because it actually made better sense for the film rather than the book's ending, which doesn't quite have that same dramatic appeal as the ending of the film does. So well done, Hugh Grant. I think that was really a clever idea, if that story is true. But I really enjoyed reading this book. It's delightful as well as being hilariously funny. Now, all of my books, I must admit, I'm looking at this list, all of these books on this list are generally British and British humour. I don't know many American funny books, but do let me know if you have any suggestions for American humorous books. I don't seem to have read many, so my apologies for most of these being British and British humour. But this one, my next book that I've put on this list, is actually to do with a television sitcom, which is my favourite sitcom, and it's American. And this book is the scripts, some of the scripts of this sitcom. It's the very best of Frasier. And it's some of the scripts, 15 of the best Frasier scripts. Now, these only go up to series 8 because this book was published before they made the other series, and this was published in 2001. Now, the reason, if you've watched all of Frasier, like I have, many, many, many times, too many times really, I could quote so many lines from so many episodes. But the great thing about this book is that these scripts were reproduced before the editing. So a lot of these scripts have lines that you never saw in the actual TV series. So it's really nice seeing some lines. If you've seen Frasier over and over again, as I have, it's quite nice to see some added lines that you haven't seen before. So I've just included this because Frasier, for me, is still laugh out loud funny, even though I've watched it so many times, and it's great to have these scripts. This was bought for me, I think it was either Christmas or a birthday, from my best friend, because we both love Frasier, and I've really enjoyed reading through the scripts again and being reminded of the series. This is actually a British publication, so I don't know how widespread it's available, or whether you can find this still anywhere. But if you can, it's great to have these scripts, and they include some of the funniest Frasier episodes, such as the Innkeepers, where they try and buy a restaurant. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Moscovitz is one of the most hilarious episodes, where they all pretend to be Jewish because Frasier's girlfriend is Jewish and they don't want her mother to know that he's not. And episodes like Sliding Frasiers, which is a very unique and funny episode too. So there you go. If you like Frasier, maybe if you're finding these scripts and wherever you could get a copy of this, it's quite fun to have a look at. My next book is a non-fiction. I wasn't going to include this because another one I've talked about recently, but I was reading this over breakfast this morning because it's one of those books that I dip into, and I tend to read my dippy into books over breakfast. And it's Bill Bryson's The Road to Little Dribbling. Of course, Bill Bryson was American, but he spent a lot of time, or I think he's still with us, but he spent a lot of time in England, and he made these wonderful books. This is the second. His first one was Notes from a Small Island, and his wonderfully observed writings about England and its places and people. And as I was reading this morning, I actually laughed out loud. I really did. So I thought, I'm going to have to include this on my laugh out loud list. And the reason I laughed out loud, because there was a chapter called To the West, where he starts out this chapter talking about the British road numbering system. His observations about this strange system of how roads in Britain are numbered, and how they're not always logical. And the bit that made me laugh, another interesting quirk of the British system, and when I use the word system in this chapter, imagine me making bunny ears with my fingers each time, are the many roads that are non-continuous. The A34 runs from Winchester to Oxford, then disappears completely, only to rematerialise 60 miles up the road in Birmingham. The A46 similarly runs from Tewkesbury to Coventry, but then gives up the will to live, a feeling we have all had in Coventry, I dare say, before popping up again in Leicester and continuing on to Lincoln. Now, what made me laugh was that bit in parentheses where he says, a feeling we have all had in Coventry, I dare say, because I have driven so many times in and out and around in Coventry and had that feeling of giving up the will to live. And again, it's that comedy, that shared experience that often makes us really laugh out loud. Driving in Coventry, I've so often had the experience of trying to get out of Coventry and feeling that I'm actually somehow got into the seventh circle of hell. So, that feeling, abandon hope, all ye who enter here, that sort of feeling. Yes, so he's full of those very well-observed, funny little witticisms about Britain's idiosyncrasies, and I just love that. I love dipping into this book, and it always does make me laugh out loud. There you go. The Road to Little Dribbling. Now, I've only just noticed, just behind me, over my left shoulder, And I'm sure you've been loving this. Is my ironing board up against the wall. I'm sure that's something that you really want to see while I'm doing videos. I'll just go get rid of that. There you go, another bit of light comedy. I've been joined by the dog. She's after her lunchtime snack, aren't you? Yeah, you'll just have to sit there for a minute. We're going to go on to the book that I'm currently reading. This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This was published in 2017, and it's not a novel. It's a diary form book, and these are true diaries from when Adam Kay was a junior doctor in the National Health Service, the NHS. It really is laugh out loud funny. There are some hilarious incidents. There are also, because of the nature of the book, being a doctor in the NHS, there are also some very heartbreaking moments and just some moments where you think, oh, for goodness sake. I think I said at the beginning that people who are in the UK are going to really get this book more than anyone who is outside of the UK, because we in the UK have all experienced the NHS, and we all know that while we all love the NHS, the fact that we can get medical attention without having to pay up front, without having to check our bank balance, and we love that, we all also know that the people who work in the NHS are not paid well. They work ridiculous hours, and the NHS is basically seriously underfunded. And so the comedy of this book comes from that, plus the incidents of various things that happen to people medically, quite often through their own stupidity, and lots of other just day-to-day incidents in the life of a junior doctor. At times completely horrifying, at times completely hilarious. It really goes from one thing to another. I would say I highly recommend this book. On the other hand, if you are at all squeamish or about to go into surgery or have a baby, because he worked on the gynae ward and in the delivery room, maybe not so much. Maybe give it a miss, because there is a lot of talk. There is a lot of descriptions of various bodily functions going wrong, etc. But it's definitely one, I think. Not only is it hilariously funny, but it really does bring home to you just the ridiculousness of the work that these people do, and the lack of remuneration that they have. Charlie Brooker says, as hilarious as it is heartbreaking. So I'm just over halfway through this, and I am enjoying it, and but sometimes I have to put the book down and go, oh. So there you go. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. And by the way, Adam Kay, after he left the NHS, went on to become a comedian and TV and film writer. So as a comedian, he knows his stuff. He has a natural way of writing very funny material. Next, I'm going to talk about this book. It's Heroes by Stephen Fry, and published in 2018. It's actually sort of second in the series. The first one was Mythos, and he says himself, you don't need to have read Mythos to follow this one. Basically, if you don't know about this book, You're right, Till. Oh. Come here. Oh, poor old Tilly. Tilly just fell off the windowsill. She's all right. She's fine. She does that from time to time. I thought she was going to make it onto the sofa, but she can't. I mean, this is a comedy video. She did this great sinking behind the sofa thing, which I have to admit was a bit funny. But there you are. You sit there for a while. There you go. So, Stephen Fry, Heroes. You're right. Yeah, you're all right. Yeah. This is basic. If you've ever read, all right, then off you go. If you've ever read the Greek myths, they can come across as a little bit dry, but this is basically Stephen Fry's retelling of the Greek myths, but in a very witty, human and comic style. Somebody had to do this at some point because the Greek mythology is so full of very strange and weird events, and you know, the the family tree of the Greek gods is so complicated that somebody had to set all this down and make it very funny. So, and that is exactly what Stephen Fry has done here. And who else could possibly take on this task but this man of great education, yeah, he's a national treasure and incredibly well-read, sophisticated, extremely funny, a great wit, a great raconteur, and one of our best loved actors and comedians. So this is great fun retelling of the Greek myths. And for my last book, I actually saw a trailer for the new film of this book coming out on, I think, on Netflix soon. So I thought, oh God, yes, I have to include this. And it's The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I reviewed this book last year and I really enjoyed this. Of course, it's a murder mystery, but it's set in a retirement village where four of the slightly elderly residents meet up to go over cold cases and try and solve them. But of course, one day an actual murder takes place in their area, and they decide to try and take on the solving of this case. Despite the fact that the local police force would rather they didn't. And it's great fun. Again, another national treasure, Richard Osman, another erudite and witty and clever comedian and presenter that we have in the UK, and he's written a whole series of these books, and definitely I really want to read more of this series of books that he has written, because I did really enjoy this one, and it did make me laugh out loud. And again, you know, it's that thing of the comedy that we British do so well is when we make fun of ourselves, and he does that brilliantly in this book. It's the very Englishness of it somehow that is kind of that is the comedy value of this, and our love of murder mysteries. So there you go. And having done the list, I really am very, very aware, as I said before, that they are all British books. But, you know, those are the funniest books that I have read. And please, please, please do, for those of you outside of the UK, please do suggest really funny novels or other books that are not British, and I will try and look out for them. So it's surprising. It wasn't until I was going through it that I realised, gosh, these are all British. It's obviously British humour that I love so much, but there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, it's very interesting to look at the comedy genre and sort of think, why is this so funny? And I time and time again, I come back to it. It's what we all relate to. Comedy comes out of absolute truth and relatable circumstances and shared circumstances and experiences. And I think all of these books have that. Even Heroes, which is about the Greek mythology, but Stephen Fry brings it to a very sort of human level that we can relate to, which is very clever. So there you go. That is my list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more books on the sort of uplifting vein, I will put a link up to that here. And of course, if you're new to my channel, please do like, subscribe and comment. It all helps to grow the channel and keep the channel going. Only like if you did like it though. I always prefer people were honest. But I will, Tilly and I will, are you coming? You coming to say goodbye? Come on then. Yeah, there, she's come to say goodbye. So, oh, there you go. That's nice. A little cuddle. Come for a little cuddle. Yeah, so that is it, isn't it? So, so I don't know what I'll be doing next week. Possibly another list of some sort. So have a good week, everyone, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now. Yeah, bye-bye.